Recorded live from the mats of Radical MMA in New York City. Martial Culture Podcast. Your source for in-depth combat sports and martial arts insights with Coach Rene Dreyfus and Matt Peters. Ring the bell and let's get it on.
Welcome back to the Martial Culture Podcast. I am Matt Peters. He is Coach Rene. Together we are the Martial Culture Podcast.
Great to see you, Matt.
Welcome back, Rene.
Glad to be here, as always.
We're warming up to episode number 11.
11.
Killing it.
Wonderful.
Making it past that number 10. We're here to stay. We're staying solid. We got our time slot locked in every week. This time, 3:30, 3:45.
Yes, so some people were wondering why we're not on last week. It was a misunderstanding.
The scheduling snafu. And we will start adding a video element to the shows at some point. Hi, guys. We may also stream live on YouTube or Facebook.
Cool.
You have a big following on Facebook on the Radical MMA's website.
I do. Yeah. I wouldn't say big. I'm not like, Joe Rogan or something like that. But, we have a good following.
We can all aspire to be more like Joe Rogan. No, you have a lot more than some people. So
yes.
Maybe we'll throw the video up there and your students and fans can check us out.
Definitely on Martial Culture Podcast Facebook page as well. I mean, that's our Facebook page, right?
Yeah. We're doing okay there as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of action in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. There was Brunson versus Cachoeria last week, and then there was Machida versus Anders, and Schevchenko fought Cachoeria last night too. It was some interesting fights, and I think things we want to talk about. Definitely some really interesting technical battles. And the last podcast we were talking about how striking was improving. And one area of martial arts, or MMA I should say, where I feel like there's a lot more to go is the clinch. Now, definitely the wrestling is there, but a combination of wrestling techniques, judo techniques, and striking at the same time. Now, of course, we have Thai clinch, which is great, and we have Greco-Roman clinch, which is basically takedowns, but putting them together in a seamless manner is something you don't see too much. And I think I mentioned that too. Podcast. There's a lot of areas that can be improved, but definitely one of the fights that I saw last week was the Cachoeria Brunson fight, and you saw some beautiful judo from Frank Camacho, who is a judo guy, and you saw two takedowns. One was a simple foot sweep called ashibarai. It's like day one judo, but he just did it and boom, he took the guy down. And another one was kind of like when judo is called an ukiwaza, it looked like a trip. It actually, when the commentators said it looked like a trip, but really, basically was this really nice off balancing. And he set him up with some nice strikes and things like that. So it was nice to see, nice to see some good judo. Unfortunately, his opponent, Dober, was really, really good, and he kept digging into the liver, and we've seen that a lot lately. And Camacho had great heart, but kind of didn't go his way. And it was definitely a southpaw. You see this a lot lately. Last night you saw too, southpaw versus orthodox, where from those positions, body shots are really open. So that was an interesting fight last week. I recommend people check it out. But last card, that Cachoeria versus Brunson had some amazing fights. That was one. There was, this is the newcomer, Gregor Gillespie. He is, really good. And it's not like his opponent, Rinaldi, was an opponent, just someone to, just be there to push him up. The guy, Rinaldi, was very good. Really, really good, grappling from both of them. But, Gillespie had a phenomenal, transition from striking to grappling and then right into mount. And while Rinaldi had a very good mount defense, and when I'm saying mount defense, I mean MMA mount defense, is that he was mounted, and as he was escaping, he did not eat any shots. He really escaped in a trained manner, which we haven't seen a lot, where he was blocking punches as he escaped. However, Rinaldi just wore him down, and went exactly like last night's fight with Schevchenko, where he went to that basic jiu-jitsu, positional dominance. It was mount, strikes, back, and he had to do that over and over again, back and forth, but finally he got the back mount finish, and Gillespie dominated. This guy is going places. Beautiful technique, great fighter. Can't wait to see him fight again. Really great fighter. And he's from the New York area. So, I know you like, to support the New York guys. So he was really nice. There was a couple wars, but we'll skip over some of the other ones. There was Bermuda's another New York fighter, but there was an interesting battle of range where you saw one person trying to, use leg kicks, to stop, the boxing. And it was successful. It was really, really interesting fight with Bermudez and Feely. But, really everybody wants to talk about the Jacare Brunson fight, which people thought it would be more competitive, and Jacare just hit Brunson so hard with that kick. Did you see the highlight?
No.
Oh man, it was a beautiful, just kick to the back of the head. And, it was just perfect timing. I think Jacare has had some setbacks lately. He fought Yoel Romero, he fought Whitaker, he didn't win, and this fight, he just proved that he's in the mix, and it was a very short fight. Back and forth. Brunson has it's true, he has better boxing than Jacare, but Jacare had good timing, and, noticed that Brunson was not maybe, and I talk about this before, I've said it many times, a lot of guys block like boxers. And which means is they bring their hands up to their temple, and that's how they block a punch. Mm-hmm. Because you're used to 10 ounce or 12 ounce or 14 or 16 ounce gloves. And when you go to that area, then it's enough. Also, punching the back of the head is illegal. However, kicking the back of the head from a standing position is absolutely legal. And, what Jacare did was, I think he noticed that he was blocking partially. And if you notice the video, and I'll see if I can post it. I actually meant to post it, but you notice the video, Brunson actually blocks the kick. He has his hand up. It's not like Jacare caught him hand down, but he has a hand up, but it's not high enough. Mm-hmm. And Jacare's kick went right around the back of the neck and knocked him right out. And that was it. It was over. Yeah. Right in the button. That was it. It was just right over. So that was last week. Wow. And then this week, which was the comeback of Machida, and everybody's kind of counting him out. He had a long layoff because of the performance enhancing issues, which was really not a real thing. He was doing some sort of...
You say he turned himself in for that?
Yeah, he turned himself in, and it was like DHEA or something like that. I forgot what it was, but it wasn't like he was taking Decaduraboline. Mm-hmm. And he had that thing, but he came back, and they had a cat and mouse, typical Machida fight where either he gets a knockout or it's this cat and mouse scoring thing. And he proved against a game opponent that he was there. However, and I started, out in karate in 1975. And definitely when there's a karate guy in the UFC, it's very nice to see it being represented. But let me tell you, Machida took a lot of hits in that fight. Mm-hmm. And while he outscored Anders, he fights with his hands down all the time. And there's a couple times where he was rocked, and it was toughness that got him through. Toughness is not technique, and it's gonna come back to haunt him. He's gotta, keep those hands up. And as he gets older, he's gonna be 40. Speed is going to decrease. And this would happen with Roy Jones Jr., who is, an amazing boxer, but Roy Jones Jr. in the boxing world he was this kind of a speed fighter, and he broke the rules. He'd fight with his hands down, he'd this, but he's so fast, people couldn't touch him until he lost the speed. And, then he just couldn't compete. And I'm thinking Machida is a very, speed, he's a very risky style because his chin is a little up and his hands are down, which is not the best place to be.
Not a long-term plan.
Not a long-term plan. No, that is not good fundamentals. And, he got away with it because he's so fast and so good. But when you're 40 years old, and I think, honestly, even though he won, probably time to hang up the gloves will be coming soon. Maybe not in a year, but, he's not going to be fighting and being in the mix, or he'll stay in it for a little too long and, suffer brain damage, which, that happens with fighters. But, I don't know if you heard, there was a big controversy last night, with the Schevchenko fight. which it was, I believe it was 273 strikes to 5. Wow. It was terrible. And Dana White posted about it, and he talked about it. Is again, Schevchenko completely outmatched Cachoeira. And it's interesting because Schevchenko is originally a Thai fighter, but she is one of the few people who come from a very strong Thai background to really, really embrace grappling. So she had 2 beautiful inside trips, beautiful, where she put the leg behind the girl and just slammed her to the canvas, then unleashed a hellacious volley of elbows from the guard, cut her open like crazy, passed the guard, got to mount, and like I was saying with the Gillespie fight, took the back and just dominated from the mount and the back, and Cachoeira had just no answer. She was grounding, pounding her from everywhere. And there was a real problem with Cachoeira because she was not defending the guard properly. Like there's a way to grip where, you'll be open to elbows, and there's a way to grip where you're not. And she did not understand the difference. It's kind of hard to see, guys, for our listeners, but if you grab a wrist with your hand facing your opponent, thumb down, the opponent can come over for an elbow. You have to grab I call it the Darth Vader force choke, where, you go like this, and come on, give me a choke, man.
You're making me nervous.
Yeah. Yeah. So you go like this, but you hold the wrist this way and this way, and it makes elbows much harder. Yeah. She was doing the other grip, and she had very loose head control, and she just ate so many elbows. Then she got put in top crucifix, which again, I always talk about is a great position. It's exactly what Cormier did to the Swiss guy.
Oh crap, I can't remember his name.
I can't pronounce it. That's the Swiss guy, the bald Swiss guy.
Yeah, that guy.
But he put him in top crucifix. Then she went mount, back mount, perfect, absolutely perfect positioning. But I'll be honest with you, by the time she got to the back mount, Cachoeira was done. She was done. She ate 271 strikes. Yeah. And this is the problem, is that my wife and I were watching the fight, and we're like, this should be stopped. This should be stopped. This is bad. This is getting really dangerous when you're eating that many elbows. And it hovered on the point of not being safe. And it was not, it was truly kind of like the old days blood sport where somebody's going to get really hurt.
Right.
And I think either, Dana White said Mario Yamazaki should never ref again.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he said. And, I'm not here to say one way or another. And sometimes, I think, you can be swayed by the crowd, because of course it was a Brazilian crowd, and they're kind of rooting for the Brazilian to do better. Or you think that, you're there, you think that she's defending, and she was moving. So there's something to be said for that. It wasn't like she ever stopped moving, but she was not intelligently defending herself. And it was just terrible reffing. And there was another fight that night too. And it was the opposite. And there was a standing for what looked to be almost no reason. Prazeres, who's a Brazilian fighter, was on top of Desmond Green, and he had a great position. What we call like the Eric Paulson in my academy, where the guy's just wrapped up. And for no reason that I could tell, I think the referee was saying that, Prazeres hit the back of the head, but a lot of times you hit the guy in the back of the head, and it's the guy moving, his fault. Cause he's moving and he puts his head there. According to the rules I understand, if you aim for the back of the head, that's not good. But if you're hitting somewhere and the guy moves and you accidentally hit him back at it, it's okay. And that's what it was exactly going with his opponent Green. And I didn't even see the head fight. I don't even know why the first stand-up happened. But he was in a kill position, and the referee just stood them up standing. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Action was happening. It was very action. And he was in a game, almost in a game over position, and the ref just stands him up. And I'm like, what? And it was just a night of just questionable refereeing, which was a shame. People don't realize the UFC does not control the referees anymore. Yeah. They used to, but the referees are sanctioned by
gaming commissions.
Exactly right. And some of the referees, and I won't say names, and I'm not exactly against Mario Yamazaki. I haven't seen enough to see that he was a good ref or bad ref, but definitely that fight should have been stopped. And this one was, I forgot the referee in the Prazeres fight. He's Mark Cannon or something like that. I forgot his name. But this is bad, but I haven't seen if he's a bad ref overall. I don't think so. But there are instances of refereeing that are really poor. And what I do notice is that there's no like, okay, we'll learn from this mistake and the referees go back and let's not have this again. I don't think the commissions do any sort of post-mortem on fights. You know, they're kind of not really doing their job. So you could say this is Mario Yamazaki's fault, but honestly, the commissions are now in charge of the refs. So there has to be these post-mortems, going over how to keep fighters safe or how to let the fight more play out. And there's been a lot of weird, really questionable breaks and stand-ups and no consistency between refs.
Yeah.
So imagine you have this ref, you know, this is going to go this way. He's going to ref like this. Oh, this ref's going to, that's not really what it should be.
Yeah, can they train to the refs?
Right, yeah.
This one has a history of stopping early. If I get a couple hits in, I'm gonna get an easy win. You
know, I remember, I was one fight, I think it was Conor McGregor, I'm not really sure. I don't remember which one, but I remember hearing it was one fighter, they were in negotiations, and he said, I will fight this opponent, whatever, but you have to make sure it's not this referee. And he said he would not sign the contract until he was guaranteed that it wasn't that referee. And I'm like, interesting, because he was so like, this referee is just so bad, it's crazy. And I forget what referee it was, but if it's that bad, you know, there has to be something done. If you're talking about refereeing to make the fighter safe, then you should do that. And on a personal note, you know, I had one fight where I lost, and at the time I was not very happy, of course, but the referee who's in the ring with me was a great referee. So actually was a friend of mine, and he stopped me from getting hurt. Of course, I was like, at the time, I was like, no, I'm fine. I was not fine. I was not fine at all. But you know, the referee made the call, and it's funny because he was a friend of mine. And, you know, you think maybe he would let me fight a little bit. No, but he was a really good, fair ref, and he stopped it and stopped me from getting hurt more for the one fight that didn't go my way. So, you know, it's a serious issue, and, fighter safety. And I know you wanted to talk about, the New Zealand guy, Mark Hunt, and talk about fighter safety, because the UFC you told me UFC made a call on pulling him from cards for a while. I was not aware, so maybe you want to explain that situation.
Yeah, so Mark Hunt, he's in the upcoming, I think the next UFC event, he's going to be not the main event, but the co-main event for, he's heavyweight, Mark Hunt. A couple months ago, or it might have been like 6 months ago at this point, he was slated to fight in one of the UFC main events, Fight Night, I think. And, he had been quoted in an online magazine, in an interview, and he said that he was fine with dying in the ring. And he, like, saying that leave it all in the ring and do all, he wasn't saying that. He was saying he was fine with being killed or dying in the ring, like in a fight. And that was fine with him. And that statement is not like, crazy, like, you know, it's fine, but it triggered something in the UFC that they don't want to put themselves in a liability where someone's going to fight to the point where they die, because if somebody dies in the ring in the UFC, that's going to change mixed martial arts in a big way. There hasn't been a death yet.
Oh no, there has.
There's been deaths later after they find out they have an injury, but if somebody literally
drops dead in the ring,
you know, gets their head. You know.
Well, there was one in Russia where he just died. I mean, he went into coma, but he was basically dead. The one in Russia, 25 years ago.
But was that in the UFC?
No, not the UFC.
Because the UFC is at this other level where all eyes on them. Yeah. So I think if people are looking for a reason to ban mixed martial arts, I mean, it's just recently got last year or the year before in New York State become legal. So they pulled the plug on Mark Hunt and they said, you need to take a break. You need to go see a psychologist. We need to get you not only physically cleared, but mentally cleared so that you're coming into this ring, in the right frame of mind. And I guess he got cleared because he's back. I definitely would agree with their situation that they need to protect themselves. I don't think that he was suicidal going in there trying to kill himself, but you got to be wary of those kind of things, that people aren't coming in here with the wrong frame of mind.
Well, you know, I have an interesting perspective on this, and I would suspect, though I have no proof, this is just my opinion, that I wish Jilson were here too, because we could talk a lot about this. You know, Jilson and we have a kind of a warrior ethos. But anyway, let me say, I suspect that the UFC only did that for legal reasons. If someone honestly dropped dead right there in the ring or fought till the point of death, I think at this point, there's so many, the UFC it's so part of our cultural landscape now.
It's too big.
It's too institutionalized. I mean, I was alive for the Mancini Duka Kim, death in boxing in the 80s, and where he killed him in the ring. Actually, I don't know if he dropped dead exactly in the ring, but pretty sure. Yeah. And then there was the Madison Square Garden one where the guy was complaining. Like, who cares if he drives in the ring or 10 minutes later? Yeah. There was the Russian guy. I think it was Russian, but, kind of former Soviet Republic guy. There's a whole New York Times expose on it where, he couldn't get medical help. He was cleared by a doctor, but, the doctor was not really paying attention. Then he was trying to get into a cab, and they tried to get him to a hospital. By the time they got to a hospital, he was basically dead. And, what happened to boxing? Nothing. It's not really, maybe a couple of regulation changes, but, when it's so institutionalized and so part of our cultural landscape, I don't think it's going away. However, obviously, fighter safety is an important deal, whether you're dealing with the refereeing and training refs. And while I'm glad that there are commissions, what I have seen is on the amateur level and on the professional level is very often commissions not doing their job in terms of fighting safety, and they just take money. Not all commissions, but I won't say which one, but we fought under a commission, and one of our fighters was being reffed by a ref who just didn't seem to be paying attention to what was obviously an illegal blow to the back of the head, to the back of the head, really hard illegal blow. And didn't do anything. And I'm like, how do you not see this illegal blow? It was just a very poor ref, very, very poor ref. And, you can see it at the amateur level. You can see it at the professional level. As I said, I was very lucky that I fought under, refs who were really well trained. The funny thing was, when I was fighting in New York, MMA was in this quasi illegal status. So most of my fights were, what we call underground, which is, silly to call it that, but.
Fighting at the docks, bare knuckle boxing?
Yeah, but I mean, but it was not regulated. Yeah. I wasn't like, Jean-Claude Van Damme in the parking lot, in, Lionheart. No, it wasn't like that. But it's funny because we were all martial artists banding together, and we were on it to test ourselves, and we were not there for, money or fame or anything like that. What we were fighting for was technique and your own personal testing martial code. Yeah. Testing your mettle, your, what you had. And at the same time, with the promoter at that time was Peter Storm. I fought most of my fights under him. And while he's kind of a controversial figure, he ran a great show, and, very, very few serious injuries. Very few. And kept things really safe. I have to say, unfortunately, I was the reason for one of the serious injuries. I inflicted some serious, he would always joke that, if it weren't for you, we would have a much better safety record. But I had one fight where I kind of gave a guy a really bad concussion, but the ref wasn't bad at all. It was just a very fast fight. And, I got kind of lucky in a position. And it was a great opponent. It just happened that way. Very, very, really well run and not regulated at all. And now, since regulation in New York, and I've seen this, the level of fighters, one, is much lower in terms of skill.
Interesting.
Much lower, because they're scraping the bottom of the barrel. And, the professionalism of the fighters and their coaches and the organizations tends to be a little bit lower, depending on the organization. There's some good out there too. But there's a lot of people like, I don't know, how are these people two fighting in front of a ring? These people are terrible. One of them is going to get really, really hurt. How are these people in the ring? I've said that many times. They're just absolutely terrible. And the ref looks like he's checking his, Instagram. This is just really, really dangerous. So in the unregulated days, it was much safer. Mm-hmm. It really was. Now it's regulated.
So they're self-regulating themselves.
Yeah.
And it was because now it's professional. It's open to everybody.
Or even the amateur. Yeah, but the floodgate open. It's legal. I'm talking about the amateur circuit that I've seen.
Yeah.
But, many of the refs are really not properly trained. The promoter wants a body.
Yeah.
So they're throwing fighters in who shouldn't be in. And, how long you trained? A couple months. What? Mm-hmm. MMA, a couple months? I don't let my guys in my academy fight MMA, so they train for years. Mm-hmm. They have to have a good, solid foundation of grappling and striking and this,
Yeah, that's really shocking to hear that. Yeah. I mean, I'm not plugged into the MMA community in New York, but it's really shocking to hear that. Is it, like, who are some of the big promoters in New York that have the great organizations? Is there ones that you want to give shout outs to, or?
Yeah, there are a few. We fought, actually, I don't know the name they're using right now, cause it used to be, I think they still use the name Triumph. Mm-hmm. And they fought in Madison Square Garden, and my student Chad fought on that. That's a really good promotion. Mm-hmm. Really professional and, just well run. There's, we're fighting, coming up in a show, near where you were, XCP. Seems like a pretty good show, though. I've never personally fought in it, but, we'll see. But it seems like very well. One of my, students, who's a friend of mine, his name's Rich Collado, fought in the show. He trains grappling with me, but striking somewhere else. And, but he fought in the show and had nothing but good things to say. But I actually have never sent fighters and gone personally, but has a great reputation. Aggressive Combat Championships, has always been a stalwart in, New York area. And, we're looking forward to supporting them. Again, I have not sent fighters to them yet. But I'm looking forward to fighting with them. But, we'll see. We'll see. I think every show, sometimes you look at a couple fights like, you just had to fill out that card. That was bad.
You needed a body. You needed a 6 man.
Yeah, it's really bad. And then, going back to what you were saying about Mark Hunt, but I'll tell you what my mentality was. And I totally understand where he's coming from. So, I've been doing martial arts for a long time, and it's, my student G said the same thing. We were interviewing him, for a possible TV spot in a documentary, and he got interviewed and he said, I don't fight because I want to. I fight because I have to. It's something in me that propels me to test myself, my mettle, who I am as a martial artist. Mm-hmm. And, that's that fighter ethos. And I was very proud of him to say to him, I said, yeah, I was the same way. When I fought, it's like I didn't have a choice. If the UFC didn't exist, the MMA didn't exist, I probably would have found some way to do that same thing in a more, protean form, Yeah. Because I did martial arts so long. And I'll tell you, the very first fight I signed up for, didn't tell anybody, except my coaches and stuff. I mean, my personal, family or anything like that. And I went to a lawyer and I said, okay, gotta settle my affairs. Cause I actually fought under Vale Tudo rules, which is very different from MMA. Stomping, groin shots, everything's in. So we were fighting a much more expansive, like the old UFC rules. Everything is in except biting and eye gouging. And, went and had my will done. And I said, I'm going to leave it all in the ring. And, if I die, I die. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Like that was my intention going in there. It was incredibly serious. And I said, if I die, I die. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave everything out there. And I think Mark Hunt was the same. And Hickson Gracie said the same thing. He's like, I am prepared to die when I fight. So I don't think Mark Hunt is crazy. It's just part of that warrior ethos that you can never take away from them. Now, of course, mental health and things like that are very important. That's another issue. But the fighters will never protect themselves. It's the coaches, the refs, and the promoters' responsibility, because the fighter is just fight, go. Mm-hmm. And like we're talking about, Machida, there's a number of fighters in Bellator who the UFC retired because look, for your own safety, you gotta stop. And I respect them because they could have been draws too. And they retired like Chael Sonnen. It's like, not that great. But he's a big draw. So, but they're like, look, you're not that good. You should retire. And then unfortunately he kept fighting in Bellator, but they cut him for his own safety and at their own expense. Of course, obviously the UFC is a big moneymaker, but there's a side where they are thinking of fighter safety, and you can see it with the Hunt thing. They're like, dude, get your head straight. Make sure you're not insane, which I don't think he is.
No.
And obviously they're cutting their bases legally in terms of liability. But fighter safety has to come from the organization, the promoter, the referee in the ring, and the coach. And we're lacking that a little bit now especially in the amateur level.
So I think that me not being a fighter and not having that experience, reading Mark Hunt's quote is taken in a different direction. I look at it and say, "Oh, Mark Hunt, don't die in the ring. We want you to live many, many years to come." And then a warrior's perspective is like the old, Spartan way. If I die in battle, or, the Vikings, if I die in battle, that's the greatest honor.
Yes.
So if he goes to war and he gives everything he has and it ends up taking his life, that's fine with him.
Yeah.
Because he left it all on the mat.
Exactly.
So thank you for kind of getting that in my head, because now I see the other side. And I can understand that he's not crazy. He's a warrior. And UFC has to protect themselves legally, so they say step back, take a couple minutes, get cleared by a psychiatrist or some sort of doctor, but he's not wrong. He's a different kind of person.
Right. Also, I don't know if you know his background, but he's a Maori.
Such warrior spirit.
Very, very, very serious warrior culture. To this day, it's like you could talk that Japanese have that samurai ethos, but obviously their average Japanese person doesn't say, I go to war every day, but the Maori people, their tribal, culture, my sister actually lived in New Zealand for a while, and, just talking with her, understanding what New Zealand's like. Obviously, she's not Maori and neither am I, and I don't have any Maori friends, but, what you can see that their fighting spirit is very, very important to them. And it's preserved from their traditional culture. And so he's coming at it's a cultural aspect for him as well, but I think it's universal. Like you said, it's the Spartans, it's the samurai, it's the Native American or Aztec warrior culture. That's, every culture has their, we talk with hero's journey, but you have to go into hell to truly be reborn as a warrior. And sometimes you don't come back, and that's the way it is.
The warrior spirit.
Yeah.
They're different. They're built differently.
Yeah. That being said, Mark Hunt has taken a lot of blows to the head.
True.
So, it was very smart of the UFC to get him evaluated psychologically, because there are, correlations between head trauma and I don't want to say mental disease, but, heightened aggression, risk taking, depression, suicidal thoughts. When people, there was that football player who didn't he kill himself, and they had tremendous brain trauma?
Which football player?
No,
unfortunately, there's a lot of them that have gone that way.
There was a football player, if I'm not mistaken, where, he took his own life, and then they did a biopsy in his brain, and he had tremendous encephalopathy, which is trauma to the brain. So obviously there's a correlation between, you can draw a correlation between head trauma and mental health, so that the UFC took the time to say, hey, see a psychiatrist, check yourself out, while obviously there's probably some self-serving element there, it's not a bad thing to do by any means, and I respect their position. And while Dana White gets a lot of flack for a lot of reasons, I think you're right. He doesn't want to see anybody die in the octagon. He doesn't want to be responsible. He doesn't want it to be that blood sport that it used to be. He wants to be a sport that can continue sustainably and generally consider fighter safety. Which is why I think he was so adamant about how terrible the Schevchenko reffing was. And it was really bad. It was, fighter safety. You kind of go in there. The fighters don't take care of themselves. They're going to keep fighting. And Cachoeira, she was a warrior. She's great heart. There was no quitting her, but she just took a beating. And I can point to a number of fights like that where you're like, that should have been stopped a little bit early. Mm-hmm. And, you know, honestly, as a fan, a lot of people get angry and they're like, oh, that was an early stoppage. Well, let's err a little bit on the side of earliness.
Yeah.
To make sure nobody, you know, gets seriously. And we talk about death, but honestly, the level of brain trauma, which you don't see, is really much more pernicious. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, you have a death, but if you let fighters continue on as just a general policy, you know, you're going to have a league of people who in their 40s and 50s are not going to be speaking straight.
Yeah.
And that's basically what boxing is. Yeah. That's why I really don't support boxing. I have a love of the technique of boxing, but the sport itself is just, you know, 90% brain trauma. Mm-hmm. And, it's funny coming from a martial arts instructor, but there's just, fighter safety is not something that, you know, Bob Arum is ever thinking about. He's like, how can I make more money? You know? So, you know, that's where I stand on that. And, it's a complicated issue.
It is we're not going to solve it in an hour.
No,
but there should be some sort of level, more oversight in the referee community. Have they ever looked at, has there ever been in a fight that's stopped or something like that and then they go back and reverse it? Like, there's no like instant replay, cause I mean, obviously it's fighting, it's different than football and baseball and stuff like that, but I wonder if there's any room for that.
Now, there have been fights where it was a win, which they went back and they saw that it was an illegal blow and was overturned and became a no contest. Was John Jones' fight like that, or was it a no contest right away? It was this referee stoppage, no contest.
I think it was right away.
Right away, right, yeah. But I know there was one where it was a win and they overturned it, it became a no contest. Maybe even more than one. But, so there probably is some review, but I generally think, that comes from the loser's coach. He's like, wait a minute. That was illegal. Please. Right.
Interesting.
I think there should be a required post-mortem of every fight or, you know, that happens, like a video post-mortem.
Yeah.
But the commissions don't seem to be, you know, up to the task in terms of manpower or personnel.
Is there a fighter union that can no?
There's no union. There's some moves towards that, but there's no union.
Because it seems like there should be some sort of group on their side that's asking for these things to happen. Because who is going to force the gaming commission to have better regulations or better training or whatever they need for those referees? If they don't need to do it, they're not going to do it. You hope that they're going to do it out of the kindness of their hearts. But if it costs them money, no.
Well, you know, that's the thing about Dana White, and he's a controversial figure, but he's instituted a lot of things like PED testing that cost the UFC a lot of money and actually probably hurts its product. Because honestly, if everybody's roided out, it's much more entertaining. You know,
like the early 90s, yeah.
Yeah. But, so you have to say that these moves towards that were not self-serving. But you know, fighters union, it's an interesting concept. There's no groundswell for that I see in that. I mean, there's some movement, but there's no real groundswell pushing towards a fighters union at this point. I know Nate Quarry is a very vocal supporter of the concept of fighters union. He's an ex-MMA fighter who's very, very critical of the UFC. I've met him once. He's a fantastic guy. But he's very, very vocal critic of the UFC and makes good points. But so far, the UFC and Bellator and all the other fight leagues don't have that in there. Now, but in terms of the commissions, they are regulated by the state. So, you know, you can make some legal changes to the way the sport is oriented. Say they're mandatory video check or mandatory this that you could make in a legislative form that I guess wouldn't have to come from a union, could come from just the sport itself. Yeah. And, I know I've heard a few things. That one thing that I'm really intrigued by is the difference in the weight cutting, because that's another fighter safety thing. And you know, if you notice, well, actually in the fight I mentioned, the Prazeres fight, he missed weight, and there was recently a fight where the fighter passed out and they had to stop for Uriah Hall. Right, that one was canceled because he passed out, and what's her name? Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and mentioned that obviously you could say, well, it might be an excuse because, she lost, but she said her weight cut was horrific. And she came into her title fight with Rose, not even herself. Mm-hmm. And she felt that Ronda Rousey went through a really horrific weight cut as well. And those are two reasons why they started losing. Mm-hmm. And, there is no question that the weight cutting, protocols that are in use today are very, very dangerous. That people cut weight a lot. And what, some shows have done in Asia is that they've required you in camp weigh-ins. So for example, you have this weight and we'll weigh you in on this day 2 weeks before and this week before and the day before and the day. And you have to hit the weight every single day. So you have to hit the same weight the day before as you hit the day of the fight as it is the week before. So you hover at like 155.
So no drastic changes.
You have to be whatever weight you weighed in. Good. Now, again, that would hurt the product, but the fighter safety is it. And you want to talk about brain trauma. When you have severely dehydrated your brain, the level of trauma is much higher. It's a very serious thing. And, I got into MMA because I was always interested in self-defense and interested in actually what works in a fight. So the main thing that I focus on is not, fighter safety and all these other things like that, but I was interested in what works in a fight. And I always think of MMA as a empirical testing ground. But as I start coaching fighters more, of course, these fighters are like my family, and you see the things that they have to go through. Cutting weight is brutal. I cut weight and it was terrible, but I think, as a fighter, when it was on my side, I'm like, this is what I got to do. I'll do it. But then when you're outside and you're the coach and you just feel for your fighter, you're like, oh, this is terrible. And there's a video of Jose Aldo cutting weight. This is, goes back about 5 years. And they're using all these, the hot bath and their, Abilene. Are you familiar with Abilene?
No.
It's a rub that you put on your skin and it really, really makes you sweat. And it's sort of this thing that boxers use for a year. I don't actually know what it is.
What's the use for that?
Well, what happens? Yeah, exactly. I know, right? I think I really don't know. But it's this chemical that everybody puts on their skin and they're putting, Jose Aldo's coach, is putting him in a hot bath and then a sauna room, which was basically the bathroom, right? And putting him Abilene and constantly doing this. And he's begging. He's like, no more. He's like, no more, please. I really can't do this anymore. If I don't make this weight right now, I'm done. Just cancel the fight. He's like, I'm done. And he's begging his coach to stop. And his coach said, no, more and more. And they're pushing him. And this is a severely damaged person right now. Like in terms of his kidneys, your kidneys can come to dysfunction if you don't have enough, water. The way the kidney works is you have this thing called the loop of Henle, which, is this loop and there has to be a certain level of salinity on both sides. And if you don't have a hydration, the salinity aspect doesn't, and your kidneys don't clear. And obviously we should get a doctor to talk about more in detail because I am not a physician. But I do know this. And if the salinity level is really disrupted, your kidneys are just done. And that's where you get into serious failure. You need your kidneys and your liver to function. And, it's weight cutting is another side. So we have, poor reffing in the ring. We have, head trauma. And then the worst one, in my opinion, right now is the unregulated weight cutting. Which is, they created that new weight class for the women. And I think that's good because they noticed that there's a lot of women in between. So it was 115 and 135. And then most women a lot of the women they found they're either too small for 135, but too big for 115. But of course they're going to go to 115. So they go to all this like terrible weight cutting and kill themselves. And then the minute they made the 125 class, boom, all these fighters moved up. They're like, oh, thank God there's a weight class for us. So there's an argument for more weight classes too. But I think really the real answer is that they should weigh them the night before and the day of and a week out and a month out, and to just have something like that they're doing in Asia. And if you fail, you fail, and that's it. You don't fight. And then the massive disparities of weight. And I talked about this in another podcast, is wrestling used to be like that in the 80s. You know, they would get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes even more, 10 people dying in amateur wrestling in America a year from weight cutting. Yeah. Not from trauma on the mat, from weight cutting.
It's just kids, college.
Kids, not even college, high school too, yeah. And they changed the NCAA and the AAU and all those organizations. They said, no, you have to be like this. If we weigh you and you're out in season, out of this amount of weight, like, you know, like a week before a match or something like that. I don't know exact rules, but if you're not like this all the way through, your coach is banned. He's banned and he can't coach anymore, and you're out for the rest of the season, if not more. And then suddenly people got really serious and it got safe. So if you put these serious penalties in, like, if you break this rule, your camp will not fight. Every fighter from your camp will be banned. That'll change things. That'll change everything.
Sure.
So, that's to me a really important element of fighter safety. And,
wow. Yeah, definitely. So we're talking a lot about fighter safety today. I want to talk a little bit about something we talked about last time, is a fighter that I hope gets injured. I'm just kidding. I'm going to bring back Cormier, just to get your thoughts on Cormier, Miocic, the Ultimate Fighter.
Oh, right. They're
the coaches in this next upcoming season.
And Demetrius Johnson versus, TJ, right?
Is he?
Looks like it's going to happen.
That's going to be an amazing fight.
Amazing. But
forget Cormier. Jeez.
Okay. So as fans, we're happy. But again, we're talking about guys who should not be in the weight classes. Like Cormier, I think Cormier should be not in 205. It's like if you actually stop eating the Popeyes chicken, you'd be in 185.
Well, Stipe weighed in at 220.
Yeah, he's not.
He's hovering.
Yeah, he's hovering.
He's still going. Are they going to fight at 205?
No, they're fighting for heavyweight.
Okay.
I don't think Stipe is going.
So Cormier will just eat some more Popeyes.
I know, which is not healthy. That's another version. Like, okay, he's not cutting weight, but now you're fighting outside of your actual weight class. Yeah. Now, that being said, Cormier is a grappler, so it's going to be. He's going to like do what he did with Ngannou. He's going to, clinch up and try and do there. And grappling will obviously offset the amount of trauma to his head. And no, because, he's grappling more, so he won't be hit as much. Yeah. But, it's a compelling fight. It's great. It's
going to be an interesting fight because they're both great wrestlers.
Yeah.
You think it'll go straight to the ground, or they're going to try to keep it up? Like you said, they're going to be grappling a lot.
Yeah, no, I think, Miocic is probably going to want to keep it on the outside because he's a much better striker. Yeah. Much better. Yeah. And Cormier is going to want to grapple, but Miocic is also a very good wrestler. So I think it'll probably play out a lot of cage work. Mm-hmm. And then, and also Miocic is kind of hard to keep down, Yeah. You take him down, he kind of pops back up, Yeah. So I think, I would think that it would play out in the cage much more. And, this is an old fight, and I talk about it a lot. It was, BJ Penn versus, George St. Pierre. And this is when BJ Penn was really good, like not like Rene now. Then talk about fighters who should retire early. That he keeps fighting is criminal. But, and I don't even think he's a draw anymore, like people don't even know who he was.
What? Is he fighting in Bellator?
No, he's from UFC.
He's in the UFC still?
No, he fought Yair Rodriguez and it was a little while ago, but he got just smoked. Yeah. And then I think he had one fight after that too. But, I remember the Yair Rodriguez where Yair just piecing him. No, he had fights after that too. He had fights after that. And he does not do well. Mm-hmm. But, this was back when BJ Penn was great and, he had really fast hands. And so George St. Pierre's, I'm going to put him against the wall and keep him against the cage and make him tire his arms out. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to box him. And it seems to me that Cormier should do something like that. Not necessarily take it to the ground, just because Cormier is another level of wrestler. And he has not just technique, obviously he has that, but your body adapts to what you put into, right? And so when he has like 35 years of Greco and freestyle wrestling, his, muscle endurance, his ability for his muscles to endure long-term grappling, I'm sure is higher than Miocic. So if he puts him up against the cage and just grinds him out and stomps him against the cage, after 2 or 3 rounds, Miocic's arms will probably be much more tired. And I think that's a legitimate strategy. Completely boring for your average fight fan. For me, no. I mean, I would love a fight like that, but, technical fight. But I think it'll probably, if Cormier's smart, it'll probably play out like that. However, if Miocic keeps it on the outside, which he's very capable of, he will pepper Cormier, kind of like the way, John Jones did. I mean, John Jones kept Cormier on the outside for most of the fight, and then bum. And Cormier has this weird thing he does with his hands. As I said, his movement is problematic in striking, and he has this weird thing he does with the hands, and a good striker can kind of time you there. So it's not to say that I'm not a Cormier fan. I mean, I'm a huge fan in a lot of ways, but he has problems with the way he strikes.
Yeah. I haven't watched The Ultimate Fighter in years. I'm worried that, I mean, it's outside the ring stuff. I'm worried that season's going to be a little boring because these guys are very vanilla.
Well, what you think is interesting and what I think is interesting is very different.
True.
I used to hate The Ultimate Fighter, but I found a way to watch it that really I enjoy.
You fast forward through the drama.
I turn the mute button on, and I fast forward through drama, and I just watch the coaching.
Yeah.
And sometimes the coaching is very interesting. You know what the best Ultimate Fighter was?
I'll tell you what my favorite Ultimate Fighter was, and I'm sure it's very different from your favorite Ultimate Fighter.
What is it, Matt?
Tito Ortiz.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
That was a great scene. Ken Shamrock. Was it Ken Shamrock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tito Ortiz actually surprised me that he was quite a good coach.
Yeah, he cared about his fighters.
No, in terms of technical coaching. Yeah. Yeah, and he cared about his fighters. And who surprised me too was Conor McGregor. Really was on that. He was a good coach. He tried his best.
So what's your favorite?
My favorite was more recent, and I've been watching it. Was the champions. They took champions from every league around the world. So they took the LFC champion, the Titan champion, champ, and they took the 120, and the winner, which was Tim Elliott, who uses a rack guard, which is my guard, which is great.
Patent pending.
Can't really patent moves, but yeah, Tim Elliott, he's the first person to do rack guard in a championship match. But anyway, Tim Elliott won it, but it was a number of really super high level guys from all over the world. Every single one of them had at least one, many of them had 2 championship belts. Mm-hmm. So you had a level of professionalism. You didn't have all like stupid stuff where like, I'm gonna pee in your fruit salad or, what, oh God.
Was it Rampage Jackson that like tore a door down? Was that him?
Yeah, that was him.
Yeah,
that was him.
That's the highlight reel stuff that you see on Entertainment Tonight.
Yes. I have no interest in that. That is, it's funny because a lot of traditional martial artists, they're like, oh, I hate modern MMA. And I was like on Facebook or something, I was commenting on some post, and he's like, it was like, what do you hate the most about martial arts? And one guy goes, modern MMA or something like that, right? And I could tell exactly where he's coming from. Now, I love the experimental and the nature of modern combat in that we're understanding so many new and interesting things about mixing and hybridizing fighting between Greco, freestyle, judo, Thai, boxing, Western boxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Russian sambo, and we're evolving really, really creative fighting avenues, that nobody's ever seen before, or not really, that were unknown. Maybe somebody did it in 1650 or something, but nobody knew it like this is a really great way to do it, and systematized it. But I do hate the crazy drama and the poster child of like crazy, stupid MMA drama is The Ultimate Fighter. Mm-hmm.
It's a reality show.
We're going to put them in a house and we're going to make sure there are at least 2 or 3 people with no self-control and put a ton of alcohol there. Like, it's
the Kardashians.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's just ridiculous. It's terrible.
I watched like the first couple seasons and then took a break. I remember the Forrest Griffin, obviously, and Stephanie
That was
Bonner.
The first season.
That was an amazing season. Great fight. Led off
so many
the charge.
champions from that season. And you had, Ken Florian. You had, the one that put that season put Jackson Winklejohn on the map. That was, Diego Sanchez was from that season.
Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, he was from that season.
He's a beast.
Yeah, and he was the reason, he's the first, Jackson, Greg Jackson fighter. Mm-hmm. So that season was historic. And then there were the other idiot seasons that, they were just crazy. And there was a couple years there where I wouldn't even touch it. But I really like to see, so, you see a new generation of coaches, we talk about fighter safety. And as I said, the coaches have an element to play there. And you see that the coaching level in the Ultimate Fighter of fighters, I'm not talking like professional coaches, I'm just talking about fighters, is really, really high. And because they're already segueing into like Uriah Faber's a really good example where he was, Cody Garbrandt's assistant coach, when they had the TJ and all that thing. And that was actually a pretty good season. There was some drama. I think some made up too, but there was some really good fights. And you could tell that Uriah Faber and Cody really knew how to coach. And I remember watching Cody, who's an active fighter, coaching one of the fighters on how to do the switcheroo, switching steps. He's like, oh, you do this and switch, and this is how you stop the guy from taking you down. And I'm like, oh, and he's walking the guy through it. And his level of coaching was very, very high. And there was an issue. We're talking about referee stoppage. But there was one of the seasons where the fighter lost. And then he got another chance because one of the other fighters got, injured. So he took his place, but it was like back to back. It was the,
that rings a bell.
Middle Eastern fighter. He grew up in France, but he's a Middle Eastern background. And he shouldn't have fought. And the opposing team coach was like, this guy shouldn't fight again. And he went in and he got shellacked. And the fighter's like, no, I can do it. And you could see, no. And his coach, I believe his coach was Cody Garbrandt. I forgot who, but his coach was like, yeah, you could do it. Cause they really wanted to, compete. And somebody should have stepped in and said, no. And the opposing team guy was, no, you shouldn't do this. This is not safe. It's not good for his health as a fighter. And of course, the fighter himself is like, I'm 100%. I'm ready to go. I'm a warrior. And then the coach is like, okay, if you think you can do it, let's do it. Where he should have been like, maybe not. And of course, he wound up just getting shellacked. And, so fighter safety is an issue. I remember that. And I was like, well, the level of coaching is high, but, still some things to learn too about keeping your fighter as safe as possible.
A lot of work to be done. Fun fact. Matt Hamill. Do you remember Matt Hamill?
Can't stand Matt Hamill.
You can't stand.
No, I mean, his story is very, inspirational in that he, is deaf and all that, but.
Well, the fun fact.
He's from your neck of the woods.
Yeah. Too. So he's got the only win over John Jones by, disqualification. Matt Hamill wrestled at, he went to college in Rochester. And John Jones is from Rochester. So fun fact.
No, and it's funny that I believe I heard the scuttlebutt that they had encountered each other on the way up a few times. Not fighting, but
I do think so.
Not fighting, but they were aware of each, aware of each other's presence and then, things like that.
Yeah. And then there was a movie that they were filming, the Hammer. That was about Matt Hamill.
Right.
Because that's his nickname.
Yeah.
And then Rich Franklin? Was that the fighter? Yeah. They were really good friends and stuff. And
he was very good friends with Matt Hamill?
Yeah.
Cause Rich Franklin is like super, super, I respect him. He's really, great, interesting guy. He was a math teacher who gave up his math teaching career to fight.
Yeah. I think he's really religious. I think he's like
Rich Franklin?
Yeah. I think he's, like a
born again or something.
Born again Christian. And Matt Hamill also subscribes to that. There was a church up in Rochester.
Such a jerk then?
There was a church up in Rochester called Trinity Church, and they also, it was an MMA gym. So it was Trinity Training.
Really?
And
interesting.
then,
it's kind of like, cause Jesus wants you to hit people.
Yeah. So they had they did a movie about it called Fight Church.
Really?
I don't know if you ever heard about that.
No.
It was like a documentary about this church that does, they preach on Sunday and then they hit each other on Monday. And then the pastor.
Sounds like the lyrics to a song. Preach on Sunday.
It's a Luke Bryan song, I think. But the interesting information and I'll preface this with maybe I'm incorrect. Allegedly, the pastor of the Fight Church, Trinity Church in Rochester, New York, had to step down recently for sexual assault allegations.
God, I knew you were going to say that.
And allegedly, I don't have the full source information. I am not plugged into the Rochester MMA community anymore, but I think that there was a big thing about that. So.
Actually, that brings up something. I don't know if you know that Rickson Gracie established a thing called the Jiu-Jitsu Global Federation. And, he is trying to, which is wonderful, and he's trying to kind of unify the jiu-jitsu community, around its sort of roots, which were a little bit more self-defense oriented and just bring the community together because it's very disparate right now. And there was some controversy, and one of the people who brought up the controversy was Henry Akins, who is a black belt under Hickson, and Ty Gay, who is a black belt under, I believe it's Henner Gracie, who's Henner's nephew of Hickson. And they found out that one of Hickson Gracie's black belts was convicted of, I think it was child endangerment. And and there was a story and, kind of like sexual assault kind of thing, and, I had a discussion with one of my students recently, and I'll bring it here. And Hickson was originally kind of supporting his student in that I don't think he understood, especially coming from Brazil, you don't understand how the legal system works or whatever. I don't know. I'm not trying to excuse Hickson or anything like that. I don't really know. But then finally he came out and said, I distance myself from this person, and we in the Federation will not allow this person to move. And he did the right thing. And I think that's a good thing. But unfortunately, we talked about cults and how martial arts can be a cult, and draw the wrong people. And, that's something we've talked about many times. And there are a lot of people teaching martial arts, not just MMA, but every martial art. We're talking Taekwondo, we're talking Kempo, we're talking karate, we're talking Aikido, who should not be around minors. They should not be teaching anything. And unfortunately, there was an article in the New York Post, and then a Taekwondo instructor was caught sexually abusing a child in the academy. And it's just disgusting and terrible. And we're supposed to be teaching great martial values in the traditional martial arts especially. But I think any martial art instructor, you're looked up to, and you're trusted, and when you betray that trust, it's a terrible thing. I actually had to distance myself from one student, an instructor, and while he never touched underage people, that was not the case. But, if you're a girl and you walked into his academy, he would seduce. Yeah. He's a creep. Yeah. And I would be training him at one point, and then I realized that I don't really want to be associated with this guy anymore. And I never witnessed it, but after you hear the 10th story, like, not 10th, there was a few, but I'm like, this, I can't be associated with this person anymore. And that's adults. That was not children. But even adults, I take my responsibility as a leader in the community very seriously, and my teacher. And if you're coming to me as a female, of course I'm married to begin with, but you are not someone I'm going to approach and seduce. Right? They're not going to. I'm a professional. And I work in professional. Outside the academy, I have my own life, but in the academy, I'm here. If I were a lawyer, I'd be a lawyer. We are a lawyer. We're not like Harvey Weinstein here. But every profession is dealing with this at some level. And, as I said, there's this Taekwondo instructor who was just caught molesting kids, and it is rampant. So one thing, as martial artists, people listening to this, as martial art instructors, whoever's listening, is like, we as teachers have to abide by a high standard. And unfortunately, there is no oversight in our community. None. We're talking about oversight of MMA. There's no oversight of martial art instructors. You could train Taekwondo for a year. And this is kind of a joke with Taekwondo. It's not to put down Taekwondo because it's everything, all right? But it's like, cause Taekwondo, you have to do Taekwondo in the Korean military. Cause in military service is required in Korea. So, a lot of, Korean immigrants, they come here and like, what could I do? A crappy job where I'm working really hard, or teach Taekwondo, which is kind of fun. Oh, I'll do that. And they'll just do it. And that's not saying they're unqualified, but they have no teaching experience or this. And maybe they train Taekwondo for exactly 2 years, but because there's just no oversight. And someone could hang up their shingle without even any experience and say, I'm a karate black belt, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. And there's so many examples of people who are not qualified. And that's just in terms of technique. Now you're talking about, if you are a child predator, where are you going to go? Well, you know what? Before it was like, honestly, you went to the priesthood, but no, it's true. Come on. Let's just be, and then or you were a gym teacher or something like that. You were a teacher around kids. But those areas have been closed off to predators. So where do they go now? A lot of times they become martial arts instructors because it's a big kids business. Now, my academy don't have kids. And I think a lot of MMA academies are a little bit more adult oriented. But if you look at the suburban karate market.
Taekwondo. Academies are popping up all over the place.
And let's talk about Kayla Harrison, who won the gold medal in the Olympics. I don't even know, but her first judo coach molested her for years. And you know, she left and went off to the Jimmy Pedro's, association in Massachusetts and got wonderful training from a amazing, you know, Jimmy Prater's just an amazing person. His dad, they're just fantastic. And they turned her into a champion, but she was already a champion before, but her coach was molesting her. And that brings us back to the ice skating. No, the gymnastics team. You know, I mean, it was like 152 girls or something.
A lot.
It's terrible. You know, when we talk about safety, we're talking about fighter safety in the ring, but, you know, you as an adult want to walk into an academy and be treated professionally. If you have your kids training, you want to bring them into an academy and know they will be treated professionally and treated correctly. I actually just had a conversation. That's not molestation, but I just had a conversation with a friend, and his kids are in Taekwondo. And one of the Taekwondo students, there's not a lot of monitoring of the class, and one of the Taekwondo students was bullying my friend's son. And that's terrible too. You know, like safety goes across board. How do we, in the professional realm, in the amateur realm, in the child in educational realm, how do we ensure that we keep people, safe? It's a question I have no answer for, you know?
I think people we need to have people feel comfortable enough to bring these things to the attention of authorities or respected people that they feel comfortable talking to.
Exactly. I think you're right. It starts with listening to the victims, you know, which is something we didn't do to women for so long. You know, like, whatever, it's just part of this or that. And I in my academy am very against, you know, bro culture. I hate the bro culture. And it's rampant in the jiu-jitsu world where it's like, we're just masculine bros and we have this like, you know, you come into the gym and you just feel this tremendous testosterone, and it's not a very welcoming orientation for women. And also, you know what the women train in those academies, there's a word in Portuguese for them, you know, Maria Tatami or Tatami de Maria, right? Maria de Tatami or something, right? It's the Marias of the Tatami, Maria meaning a woman, and you're just basically there to go out with the instructor or the high level, you know, you're just, you know, eye candy for the guys to hit on. And, I tell all my students, there's no gender here in the academy. There's no sexual orientation. There's no this. We're fighters. Everybody gets respect and everybody gets treated like that with respect. And nobody's like, oh, well, they're girls, so we're not going to train them hard or whatever. We're just going to like, you know, show them a couple things. And let me tell you, I have a lot of respect for the Gracie family, but the original members of the Gracie family are very misogynistic. They're like, there's no place for women in fighting kind of thing, you know? And that's not a good thing, you know?
Yeah. The world is changing. Change with it or get left behind. We're running close to the end. We talked a lot about oversight, keeping tabs on things, making sure that the referees are doing their job, and then, you know, people need to just be aware of things that are going on. And, you know, when somebody says something, take them seriously, investigate it. You know, that's, I think we just, and I like you said, in the ring, there's that, maybe we can have some sort of replay of what's going on. But in the more larger community, we just have to police ourselves better. We have to police ourselves better. And that was the one good thing about the story about the Hickson issue, you know, student, that we as a community policed ourselves very well in that. And two black belts, Ty Gay and Henry Aiken, stepped up and said, we respect you, Master Hickson, but this guy is a sleazeball. You got to call him out and distance him from the community. And he did. And Hickson did and made the right call because he was advised correctly. I think, you know, once he was made aware of the situation. And I think, you know, like I said, in my old days, in MMA in America and New York, we policed the community really well and was really safe. Not really safe, but, you know, relatively safe, right? And MMA is not really safe. But, you know, we as a community have to police ourselves in all these issues. And that's probably where we need to go. Yeah. we encourage some listener feedback. Let us know what you guys thought. How can MMA be better with the referees? What steps should they take? What are your opinions on what can be done to improve fighter safety with the weight cutting? Just let us know what you think, and we'll talk about it next time. I think big fight's coming up that we should put wagers on.
Oh yeah, I was a lot of okay, so of course there's the Stipe fight, but the one I'm really looking forward to is, I hope it happens, is TJ Dillashaw and Demetrius Johnson. That would be just unreal. That would
putting
be,
all my chips on Mighty Mouse.
That would be great. And there's Romero versus Rockhold. Oh God, I really hope. Yeah, that's going to be one. Who do you got, Rockhold or Romero?
I'm gonna say Rockhold. I've liked him the last couple times.
Yeah, I mean, he's his own worst enemy. And he got a little bit arrogant, and he just put his hands on, and I think he's gonna take that title again. And I really, really hope that happens. Really, really. And then there's that. We have they confirmed the Ferguson versus Nurmagomedov. Khabib. Ferguson versus Khabib. That's a great one. That's a little early in April, but that's going to be one I'm really, really looking forward to.
Did Nama Yunus get? She's fighting against Joanna again.
Oh, right. That's right. When is that? Hold on. That's quite a while away, right? But yeah,
I saw
you're right.
A poster for it the other day.
Yeah. When is that?
In Times Square.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me. No, I think it's. Yeah, I have to look up when it is. But yeah, that's good. Who do you got? Rose or Joanna?
Joanna. She's coming back hungry.
Really? Okay. So we make a bet.
I'm not doing any physical.
Oh, why not?
Physical.
Wrist lock. You have this wrist lock this time. You don't need you have another wrist. You don't need it. Or leg lock.
I don't get to do anything to you.
No, you can do whatever you want. You do whatever you want.
I'll give you a titty twister. I don't know how to do any moves, man. You'd have to train me for a night.
No, but you could, I could pay you money. We could be anything you want. Right. Yeah. I don't have any money. Or I have to do like 50 push-ups with you sitting on my back.
What if we put this out to the community? Vote on what will be done to me.
Yes.
If I lose, and vote on what I can do to Rene.
Yes. Right. It could also be, like give me 100 push-ups or something. Like,
yeah. Hopefully they don't pick that.
No. That would be for me.
I'd have to do girl push-ups.
No, that would be for me. No, that would be for me.
Okay.
No. I want the submission. I want to make you scream for cutting me out of.
What fight are we putting this money down on? The next one? The next big one?
Oh,
want to do Rockhold?
No, but we picked the same guy.
Right. Are you going? What about? I don't know what. We'll have to come back to people. Which
Joanna versus.
You think Rose is going to win?
I. You know what? I'm not like a fan, but I kind of hope.
I do like her. She's got a great,
and she's really
warrior attitude.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. And she definitely picked her apart the last time, but Joanna said it was a weight cut, but we'll see. And Rose definitely didn't show all her tools. She beat her with striking, which was amazing. But Joanna's jiu-jitsu is no joke.
I don't want Joanna to win. I just think she will. I like Rose more.
Yeah, okay, I'm going to take Rose though. I'm going to take Rose.
Okay. We're putting it on the books.
Jiu-jitsu, the grappler. Okay, so we'll put out the punishment there. I get to pick. People will pick a submission that I will do to you, and then for me, I'll have to do some sort of horrific conditioning workout that you choose, like 200 straight push-ups or something.
Okay, we'll put some options out there.
200 is not something. I'm not like Tyson where
we don't want to have like them writing in whatever they want. So we'll pick like maybe top 5 submissions or chokes or whatever. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. Look for that poll.
But I can hold it a little longer this time, right?
You want to put me out, don't you?
No,
this guy's got pent-up aggression for the last couple of months.
Yes, no, we're the number one podcast, and what happens? They schedule someone in our slot, so I don't get to go last week. I was just very hurt. I'm a very sensitive guy.
We're slotted for the next 10 years. This is where we're going to be. Don't worry.
Okay.
You'll get the bill eventually. No. So yeah, look for that poll. It's going to come on our social media and, Facebook and Instagram, and vote for that. And then please tell Joanna to start training. I'm going to send her a message and she'll know about it. Thanks for listening to the show. We need your support. We need you to like, we need you to subscribe. We need you to share and, rate and review on iTunes and anywhere you, get your podcasts from. Spread the word, spread the show. Let your friends know about it. We're back, and we're going to be consistent for the next foreseeable future. We're not going anywhere. Thanks for listening to the Martial Culture Podcast. Rene, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming in.
Much appreciated. As always, it's a pleasure.